My name is Ron Schwartz. I'm the grandfather of the photographer here. He asked me if I would be willing to do a little interview based on my military experience during World War II, and I thought I would be honored to add to whatever information I could. So here we are. I'll let Wolfgang ask the questions, and in my declining years, I will try to formulate the right answers. I was born in 1926. I was not quite 15 years old when World War II broke out, and the minimum age for joining the military at that time, you had to be 17 years old to join the Navy with parental consent. Well, anyway, my brother Bill, he was a few years older than me. He left 3 or 4 weeks after World War II broke out, and he had joined the Navy. So I had made up my own mind that if the opportunity came for me to serve, that I would follow in the footsteps of my brother Bill, which I did. I joined the Navy in 1943. I joined the Navy on my 17th birthday. I'm not sure my memory is quite right on this one, but I think my father said, "I'll be glad to sign and get them out of my hair." So my dad signed off on me, and my mother did, and 6 or 7 days after my 17th birthday, I was on my way to a naval base, which was hard to believe, a naval base in northern Idaho. It was a huge naval training base right up in the mountains, right on Lake Pend Oreille, up on the neck of Idaho. And we started out boarding a troop train in my hometown of St. Paul, and off we went on the new adventure. And at age 17, I'd be amiss if I didn't say it was possibly a little frightening at times, but it worked out. We were well guided in the military, and the military were accustomed to dealing with young people. The Navy had a huge naval training base. There were thousands of swabbies, that's a nickname for sailors. There were thousands of sailors in the Farragut, Idaho Naval Training Station. And I was there for about 6 or 7 weeks for basic training. We were sent to San Francisco for shipping out. So finally, the time came to move out, and they loaded us onto buses and hauled us down to the harbor in San Francisco. And the first night, we were just getting ready to leave San Francisco, and they ordered all hands had to go below the decks. This was during the 1943. The war was pretty hot yet. And we all had to go below decks, and the ship was put in total darkness, total blackout conditions. And that night the Navy was preparing our evening meal for our first meal at sea. And in their wisdom, I think there must have been wisdom there someplace, but our first meal at sea was pork and sauerkraut. And the smell of that sauerkraut permeated the ship. And it's just as well, because after a couple of hours, there were other smells that were worse than sauerkraut on the ship. You can imagine a couple of hundred guys getting seasick at the same time, and no mommies to go to. We got out beyond the Golden Gate, and those big Pacific swells, the big rollers were coming in, and the ship was bobbing up and down like a cork. And that was where we enjoyed our meal for the second time. That was where we got rid of it. And I do like sauerkraut today, but that's too much of the foolishness. Where we had no idea where we were going. Of course, nobody did except the crew. When the crew didn't know, except the leaders of the ship. But we were at sea for 2 or 3 days, and the rumors came around that we were probably going to go to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, which we did. And I'll tell you, after 6 days at sea on a rolling old tub of a ship, I saw those black islands, the Hawaiian Islands. When you first approach them, look black, I suppose from the lava or whatever. But I saw those islands coming out of the ocean, and it was a beautiful sight. Land ho.
Yeah.
When we got to Pearl Harbor, then I was sent to it was called a receiving station, I think, just a temporary station where you waited to be sent someplace else. And I got there, and then I was ordered to go to the submarine base at Pearl Harbor, and that's where I spent my 2 years of overseas duty was spent at Pearl Harbor. I was involved in submarine repair as a naval electrician. But at that time there were no civilian workers on the submarine base at all. That was taboo. It was all just military. My end was electrical work. The World War II submarines, well, all submarines operate on battery power, but the World War II subs were top of the line. I had the occasion to get on a couple of the older submarines that were very crude, but the World War II fleet we call them the fleet submarines. They were top of the line, and they were as deadly a weapon as you could imagine. One submarine could just inflict just horrific damage. But that's the way it was. So anyway, I spent 2 years in and out of Pearl Harbor and did what I was told to do and went where I was sent and lived through it. Yeah. That's not my daughter. I watched the American ships bringing back Japanese prisoners. I watched them offloading Japanese prisoners. They loaded them onto the railroad half cars, like, and what the prisoners being transferred on were actually half of a train. So they stood up, and the upper part of their body was above the train. As I recall, one guard on each railroad car, which, if anyone wanted to try anything, was totally inadequate.
Yeah.
But yes, I watched the prisoners. Then they were sent up to an encampment up in the hills on the island of Oahu, which is the island that Honolulu was on. Yeah, they were a sad-looking lot, but they were. I'm sure they were quite a bit of joy too, because at least they lived through it. I think many of the prisoners were, at that point in time, were glad to be prisoners rather than be dead.
There was a planned invasion of Japan that never saw fruition.
Oh yes, the invasion of Japan was imminent. Yeah. And we were just so fortunate that it didn't have to happen. It was a horrific first step towards ending the war. Was the ultimate step in ending the war was the atomic bombing, which has had many different opinions voiced on that, but just as harsh and as terrible and as cruel as it was, it just saved hundreds of thousands of people from a land invasion. It was terrible, but it was the best choice of the worst, I guess. I was on the edge of combat, but the night that I remember being in actual combat, a friend of mine, another sailor, him and I had been in Honolulu, and we were out towards Waikiki Beach, and been a little drinking going on, stuff like that. But anyway, this would have been after the war. The local young bucks, the local guys, I think, had finally had enough of seeing their girlfriends and that all attracted to to the military people, and by the time the war was over, the local guys had had enough of that, and we were jumped on by, I don't know, 6 or 7 of the young guys that had had enough of the military, and it was quite a tussle, but I was never so happy to see the police as when the Honolulu police showed up that night, because my friend and I were getting the shit kicked out of us. That's obscene
Yeah, it's all
expression.
right.
But I was glad to see the Honolulu police show up. The young locals, they ran off, and my friend and I, we got loaded into the Honolulu police vehicle and hauled to the Honolulu police station and put into the drunk tank, which is not a very friendly place, in case you've never been in one. And we were in the drunk tank for a couple hours, and the Honolulu police got a hold of the Navy Shore Patrol at Pearl Harbor. They came and got us, and my friend and I, and put us into the Navy brig, and the Navy brig at the Pearl Harbor Naval Station. That was a step up from the Honolulu police. Anyway, these naval base people called the submarine base, which is where I was located, and the submarine base shore patrol came and got us and put us in the submarine base brig, and that was top of the line. I mean, I'd recommend that prison, that jail, to anybody. It was, anyway, this all happened in one night. Now, I think I have the record. I'm not sure of it, but I think I have a record of some sort of being the only person that has been in jail, 3 different jails, in one night. And I'm proud of that. They can't take it away from me. So, anyway, that was the last combat I saw in the Pacific. I went away as a 17-year-old after almost 3 years in the Navy. I came home and I was still 19 years old. If you just put that into perspective today, here I am, a 19-year-old veteran of 2 years overseas. It's crazy. There's no comparison with what's going on today, and that's good. It was when I was 17. This was my boot training picture. I just graduated from basic training. I might add the one in the sailor suit is me.
Right.
And I might just mention something about the other picture.
Mm-hmm.
My lovely wife,
Mm-hmm.
the joy of my life.
Mm-hmm.
She chased me. She ran me down. I finally slowed up just enough so she could catch me, and it worked out fine.
Mm-hmm.
This is taking so long, I'm going to shave again. So I really appreciate your taking the time to do this.
Oh yeah.
That's very, very meaningful for me, and I want to thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you allowing me to do this.
And I will, if there are any royalties, I will share them.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know that you get half, I get half.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, does a diploma count as a royalty? Because I'm gonna graduate because of this.